Hello. So in this video, we're going to talk about the application statistics and the success rates when we're applying to medicine and dentistry in the UK. And I'm going to take each part individually, depending on whether you're applying as a medical undergraduate, whether you're applying as a graduate, international, or going to look at dentistry as well. So if you want to skip to that specific part that's relevant to you, then feel free to do that. But before we do so, I just want to get us in the right mind frame for how to look at these applications, because what's very tempting when you look at this is to just take the number of places, the number of applicants, divide one by the other, and then that gives you your application success rates. But that isn't the right way to look at it, and I'm going to explain a little bit why. Because this, firstly, isn't like a maths problem that you might have in probability statistics at school. It's not a fixed probability. You get 4 UCAS application spots, and it's not like if you flip a coin 4 times, the chances of you rolling at least one heads are, are more than one. It doesn't work like that, right? So the way to look at it is a bit more like the applying for a Olympic team, right? There might be a 1% chance of getting on the Olympic team, but there is a quality threshold. So out of that pool of people applying, you might have someone who's done zero training. And although the average is 1% or the population level is 1%, that individual probably has zero chance. Whereas on the other hand, you might have Usain Bolt in his prime in that team, and he's near 100% of getting on the Olympic team. And that's the better way to look at it, because essentially medicine and dentistry are a quality problem. So on the Future Doc program, we are there to train people on the predictable offer protocol to reach that sort of level to turn the odds much more in your favor. So first, let's have a look at the data for the general application statistics. I'll move myself out of the way. I'll make myself a little bit smaller and move myself out of the way. So let's have a look at the general numbers, right? So this is medicine, and I'll explain how there are a few nuances here, but it gives you a good picture. So the total number of applicants for the 2026 data is that 25,000, nearly 26,000. It is up 10% from last year. And if you look, the places are up from last year, but only 4% in comparison. This is actually, other than we had a real spike in COVID times, but this is the highest it's been since then, really. That doesn't account for that period. So of that, we've got the breakdown of where the applications lie across undergraduate, graduate and slash mature students, and reapplicants, and then also international. Now, reapplicants is actually quite low relative to the number. Typically, it's around 20% of applicants are applying not for the first time. So that's one that's actually a little bit lower than normal, but like I say, this number is rising. We've also got a breakdown of the places available. Now, the difficulty with attributing graduates to this number is that so some universities will have grad specific courses, but they'll also have 5-year undergraduate courses to which they will allocate a certain number of places for graduate, but it's at their discrepancy. So it's hard to get a solid figure, but the estimate is around 600, but there's no hard data to prove that. But what's interesting is the number of UCAT test takers. Again, this was actually an all-time high for the number of people taking the UCAT. Now, I will caveat that some of the people taking the UCAT are applying to dentistry, because when you do the test, you don't have to state what your intention is for which course you're applying to. So that does have some confounding numbers in there. But why I wanted to point this out is, one, that, like I say, it's an all-time high. And two, is that the number of people, even if you add up the people applying to dentistry and medicine together, compared to the number of people taking the UCAT, you can see that number diminishes significantly. Now, also, I will also kind of explain or state that there are lots of people who are preparing for the UCAT and don't even take the test. So by the time you get to this 26,000 number, you have already filtered out a lot of people. So it depends where you are in your application journey. But if you're at the stage where you haven't even sat the UCAT yet, the figures that I'm going to say are probably a little bit generous, because most of them, the hard data that we have is only at the point where people actually submit their application to UCAS. Now let's look at the individual application rates, or the application success rates, because The one of the challenging ones is the undergraduate one because what is really what is average versus what is typical are two very different things, and really it doesn't matter so much. Again, this is why it's a quality problem because it's really subjective to you as an individual and the university that you are applying to, right? So really that gives you more of a range more than anything, and the range goes as low as some universities have a 10% application success rate of people who apply to getting offers. Some, like in Aberdeen and Scotland, have much higher. But when we are thinking about the typical average person applying, they usually want to go to the, let's say, more competitive universities, the ones with the better reputation, and those are really more around the kind of lower end of the range, and the typical average is in that range is around 16%. The way that we get this is that Cardiff University, for example, is the most popular one that people have applied to, and they have around just over 4,000 applicants every year, and of those 16.4% of people get offers. So for every 100 people that apply, 16% will get an offer. So that's where we get that figure from. Now, next we have our graduate pathway, and this is the most restrictive offer because it's basically places are limited and they are very selective. It's incredibly competitive. Now, again, this is where there is really a range of how likely people are to get in. And again, it really depends on where you're applying. So we've had students who we've got into Newcastle grad entry, one of the most competitive ones, where on a given year it can be as low as one offer, for every 41 applicants. So that's rounded down is about 2%. And then on the other end of the spectrum, we can see there was a study done. You can see here by Garrod but that was back in 2011 that showed it's around a 7% application success rate. However, since then, it has become a lot more competitive, and I would argue that that probably is a bit obsolete, but there hasn't been a study as comprehensively done as that since that one that we are aware of. But because it varies on a university by university basis, especially grad, this is why it's so important to have your finger on the pulse, be really aware, really strategic, and really the difference between us when we help students get in is that really up-to-date knowledge. And I feel for grads because it's a very confusing and lonely and difficult application process. So having a community of people around you and, like I say, keeping your finger on the pulse is incredibly valuable in turning those success rates much more into your favor. Then we have international. Now, international is incredibly competitive for many reasons, but one of them being that the government actually caps each cohort at each university to only a maximum of 7.5% of students being international fee paying. Now, you have to bear in mind that the way it works is that 7.5% often overlap a lot across the most popular universities, and that's where international students want to apply to. So typically you have people going to Imperial College London, which is about a 2.1% success rate, King's College London, which is about 2.7%, then Bristol quote about a 2% success rate, and here you have Oxford as well quoting 2% in these sources. So 2 to 3% for internationals is typical. And again, uber competitive and really important to nail everything about the application to differentiate yourself. I think often internationals also, the fact that they're not familiar with the system, they don't always know what a good application looks like. Just by, again, remember that what I said before, it's a quality problem. So if you are ahead of that curve, you understand what's going on, you can take control of the application, you can submit a really strong one, and that does separate you apart, and that's how people kind of turn those odds more in their favor. And then finally we have undergraduate dentistry. Now this is this data is gathered from a study that was done fairly recently in 2022, and really it shows that now dentistry has overtaken medicine in its level of competition. But this peer-reviewed study showed that really for every place, there are about 12.6 applicants, showing that, again, fiercely competitive. So that is essentially the reasoning behind these figures. In another video, I'm going to talk about the future doc success rates and show you exactly how we calculate those and how we arrive at them. So I hope you found that useful, and I will see you in the next video.